Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you. When I first looked at the stack of research for today's topic, I thought I knew exactly how this hour was going to go.
Oh, yeah. What did you think?
I thought we were going to be talking about, early 2000s nostalgia, maybe some velour tracksuits, a few funny reality TV moments from The Simple Life, just kind of a light, fluffy trip down memory lane. Instead, I feel like I've just read a masterclass on brand strategy, a legal thriller, and frankly, harrowing report on institutional abuse all rolled into one.
It's a lot.
It's a whole lot. We are tackling a figure who is, arguably one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, someone who, for better or worse, actually defined the celebrity culture of the 21st century.
It is a fascinating case study. We're looking at someone who has been called everything from a genius marketing strategist to, well, the punchline of 1,000 late-night jokes.
We are talking, of course, about Paris Whitney Hilton. And if you think you know the story, the heiress, the parties, the tiny dogs, you might be surprised by what we found in the stack of research today.
I think a lot of people will be.
Because there's a central tension here that we really need to unpack right from the jump. It's the paradox of Paris.
Exactly. This is the lens through which we have to view this entire deep dive. On one side, you have the dumb, blonde persona, the party girl, the reality TV star who famously asked if Walmart sells, walls.
Right.
But on the other side, you have a business mogul who has built a multi-billion-dollar empire, a pioneer of the influencer economy, who literally wrote the rule book everyone is playing by today, and more recently, a very serious activist changing federal laws.
It really is wild. I mean, she is the great-granddaughter of Conrad Hilton, the founder of Hilton Hotels, so she comes from this massive dynasty. But somehow she became famous not for running hotels, but just for being herself.
And that is the crux of it. She really embodies the concept of the célibataire. It's a term we don't hear as much anymore because the phenomenon is so normalized now, right?
Totally.
But in the late 90s and early 2000s, this was a huge disruption. Before Paris Hilton, fame was usually tied to a specific talent.
Yeah.
You acted, you sang, you played a sport. It was transactional. You gave the public art or entertainment, and in return, they gave you fame.
Right. Fame was a byproduct of the work. It wasn't the work itself.
Exactly. Paris shifted the culture to consuming raw presence. It became about the lifestyle, the image, the brand, the person themselves. She understood, perhaps before anyone else, that attention is an asset class. You can bank it, you can spend it, you can leverage it.
It's the absolute blueprint for everything we see on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere today. So, our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how she did it. How did a socialite create the blueprint for the entire Kardashian era? What is the truth behind that famous baby voice? And we are definitely going to get into her recent pivot to activism regarding institutional child abuse, which is a heavy but incredibly important part of her story.
It is a complete arc. From the Waldorf Astoria to the Utah State Legislature, you couldn't write it.
So let's start at the very beginning, the origin story. Because you'd assume growing up a Hilton means a life of total ease, but the details paint a more complicated picture.
Right. Born February 17, 1981 in New York City. She's the oldest of four. You've got Nikki, Barron, and Conrad. And obviously the lineage is incredibly high profile. Her parents are Richard and Kathy Hilton.
Kathy Hilton, who people might now know from reality TV herself.
Right. And her aunts are Kim and Kyle Richards, who people will definitely know from The Real Housewives. So fame and cameras, they're in the family DNA.
So the DNA is just loaded with media presence from the get-go.
Absolutely. And the setting for her childhood is it's opulent. We're talking about living in suites at the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan. Imagine that for a second.
Dad.
Your childhood home isn't a house in the suburbs. It's a suite in one of the most historic hotels in the world. They had homes in Beverly Hills, the Hamptons. It was a transcontinental life of extreme, extreme privilege.
But here is a detail that I loved because it just completely subverts the image. She was described as a tomboy.
That's right, which is so not what you'd expect. She actually wanted to be a veterinarian.
A vet. And get this, she apparently saved up her allowance money to buy monkeys and goats. I mean, who does that?
And there was this amazing story where she once released a snake in the Waldorf Astoria.
No way.
Yes. Can you imagine checking into this 5-star luxury hotel, you're paying top dollar, and you find a literal Hilton snake slithering down the hallway?
It's incredible. But it points to something, right? A kind of restless energy.
It creates a great visual. But that energy, that sort of restless, boundary-pushing energy, started to clash with her environment pretty quickly. You have to understand the atmosphere she was raised in. It wasn't just rich. It was conservative, old money rich.
Yeah, the research mentions her parents, Richard and Kathy Hilton, were actually very strict. We're talking no dating, no makeup, and etiquette classes.
They wanted to debut her as a debutante. The formal balls, the white dresses, the whole being introduced to polite society. It was a very old-fashioned patriarchal system.
Which she hated, right? I read she just loathed it.
She loathed it. She called it very proper, very prim, almost like a Stepford wife. She didn't find it natural. She felt suffocated by the expectation of being this perfect, silent mannequin for the Hilton name.
And you have to set the scene. This is the late 90s in New York City. The club scene is exploding. It's the era of big parties, big personalities.
Exactly. So you have this huge clash between the debutante expectation and the absolute allure of the nightlife. And of course, the nightlife wins.
And the rebellion starts. She's sneaking out to clubs at 16, getting fake IDs. And this is where things take a turn that I think a lot of people didn't know about until very, very recently. Because usually when a teenager rebels, maybe you get grounded, maybe you lose your car keys for a week. But when a Hilton rebels, the consequences are different.
This is the foreshadowing of the whole troubled teen industry discussion we'll get to later. Her parents were terrified. They felt things were getting out of control. Her mother, Kathy, has said in interviews since that she was scared for her, scared she would get kidnapped or hurt in the city.
Which, is an understandable fear for a parent.
Of course. But the solution they turned to was extreme. They turned to an industry that was, and still is, marketed to wealthy parents of rebellious kids. These so-called boarding schools for emotionally troubled teens.
And we are not talking about a strict prep school where you have to wear a blazer and study Latin.
Not at all. We're talking about places like Provo Canyon School in Utah. She was sent there and to other similar facilities for a total of 11 months. She got out when she turned 18.
And for decades, she didn't talk about what happened there. It was just a blank spot in her timeline.
No, it was a secret she kept for a very long time. It didn't fit the perfect life narrative. It didn't fit the brand. But the allegations she's made since are horrifying. She describes mental, physical, and sexual abuse by the staff.
It's really hard to hear.
She talks about solitary confinement for up to 20 hours a day, forced medication to sedate the students, being physically restrained and beaten.
It sounds like a prison, not a school.
In many ways, that is exactly how she describes it. It was a deeply traumatic experience that clearly shades a lot of her psyche. It's that feeling of having no control over your body, your choices, or your environment.
Which makes her later obsession with controlling her own brand and image make so much more sense.
Absolutely. But at the time, she comes out of it, turns 18, and heads right back into the world. And I think you can argue that her subsequent behavior, the nonstop party girl, the constant movement, the I'm having fun all the time persona, was a direct reaction to being locked up for nearly a year.
It's like a slingshot effect. You pull her back that far, and she's just going to launch forward with that much more force.
With a vengeance.
And she does. So we move into section 2 of our outline here, the explosion of 2003. But really, the fuse is lit a bit before that. She's not an unknown.
Not at all. By 2001, she's already being called New York's leading it girl. She signed with Donald Trump's modeling agency, T Management, when she was 19. She's in the papers, she's at all the parties.
But the visual that really solidified her status before the reality TV fame was that Vanity Fair shoot in 2000 with David LaChapelle.
Oh, the pictures are iconic.
Truly.
They are. LaChapelle has this hyper-saturated, surreal, almost pop art style. And he captured Paris and her sister Nikki in a way that sort of validated them and sent a message.
What was the message?
It said, these aren't just names in a gossip column. These are cultural figures. These are faces. It moved her from the society pages to the pop culture pages in a really significant way.
But then comes 2003. This is the year everything just goes into hyperdrive. We get the reality TV breakthrough, The Simple Life.
Which is such a simple but absolutely brilliant premise. Take two incredibly wealthy socialites, Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie, and just drop them in a rural community.
In this case, Altus, Arkansas. Population 817.
No cell phones, no credit cards, and they have to work manual labor jobs. It's a classic fish out of water story.
I always found it funny that Nicole Richie was actually a replacement. It was supposed to be Paris and her sister Nikki.
Right, but Nikki declined. She was described as more shy, more reserved, and maybe less willing to perform in that way. So Nicole steps in, and the chemistry between Paris and Nicole was just electric. They were hilarious together.
But this show is really where the persona is born.
Oh, completely. The birth of the dumb blonde character. asking if Walmart sells walls, not knowing what a soup kitchen is, trying to milk a cow in heels. It was comedy gold.
And it was an act, right? We know that now.
It was essentially a sitcom where they were playing heightened, cartoonish versions of themselves. But the audience didn't necessarily know it was an act. They thought, wow, this girl's actually this clueless and out of touch.
Which made her both entertaining and, I guess, easy to mock.
And that's a powerful combination. But we have to address the elephant in the room, the dual catalyst for this explosion. Because right before the show premieres, we get the leak of the sex tape. One Night in Paris. It featured her and her boyfriend at the time, Rick Salomon. And the timing of this leak, just a few weeks before the show's debut in December 2003, created what you might call a perfect storm for publicity.
It's a hugely controversial topic, obviously, but just strictly looking at the numbers, the impact was undeniable. The show's first episode drew 13 million viewers.
13 million. For a new show on Fox, their ratings went up 79% among adults, 1849. It was a monster hit right out of the gate.
It catapulted her from New York it girl to global household name literally overnight. Everyone wanted to see the girl from the tape or the girl from the show, and the two things just fed into each other in this massive feedback loop.
But it's really important to note the legal aftermath here because it speaks to the lack of agency she had in the release. It's a crucial detail.
Right, because the narrative for a long time, and I remember the late night jokes, the magazine covers, was that she leaked it herself to get famous, that it was all part of some master plan.
And the records just do not support that. She sued the company that released it for invasion of privacy. Rick Salomon, on the other hand, distributed it himself. He made a deal.
And she has been very, very clear on this point. She claims she never made $1 from that tape. She says, quote, "I make enough money in nice ways," pointing to her fragrance line and other ventures.
Exactly. It was a violation of her privacy that happened to occur at a moment of high visibility. It wasn't some calculated career move. But she had to live with the stigma. The dumb blonde from the show and the scandalous girl from the tape merged into this single, easy-to-digest caricature.
So now we have Paris Hilton, the global superstar. And this leads us to Section 3, the art of the persona versus the business mogul. Because for years, people really thought she was just dim.
That was the brilliance of the performance art. We have to deconstruct this character she played. The Paris talk, that high-pitched baby voice, the breathless delivery, the vocal fry. It was all completely calculated.
She basically created a vocal costume.
That's a great way to put it. And there is a great quote from her where she says, "I think people can understand that you couldn't possibly get this far being a dumb blonde." She was playing a role that she knew the audience wanted and, crucially, that the media would eat up.
And she maintained it. That's the part that's so wild, the discipline of it. She would go on David Letterman, on red carpets, in serious interviews, and never break character for years.
She realized that the dumb blonde was a non-threatening, entertaining archetype that allowed her to fly under the radar while she built a business empire.
And man, did she build an empire. She monetized that role better than anyone before her. Think about the catchphrases. That's hot. Loves it.
She even has a new one now, sliving, which is slaying plus living.
I love sliving. But let's go back to that's hot. That was everywhere. It was the Riz of 2004.
And here's the business mind at work. She actually trademarked it.
Wait, really? You can trademark a 2-word sentence?
If you use it as a brand identifier, yes.
You can.
And she enforced it. She successfully sued Hallmark cards because they used her image and the phrase, "that's hot," on a greeting card without her permission.
That is just incredible.
But think about what that means. That is not something a dumb person does. That is aggressive intellectual property protection. She understood that her speech patterns, her very way of talking, was valuable IP.
And then you look at the sheer scale of the branding machine she built behind that persona. I knew she had perfume, but I didn't realize the numbers until I saw this research.
The numbers are staggering. As of 2020, her line of fragrances had generated over $2.5 billion in revenue.
Billions with a B.
With a B. That puts her in the absolute elite tier of celebrity entrepreneurs. That's Rihanna Fenty Beauty territory. That's Jessica Simpson collection territory. It's a massive, massive business.
And it wasn't just perfume, it was everything. It was a retail shotgun blast. Handbags, jewelry, hair extensions.
The Dreamcatchers line. I remember those ads in magazines.
Yes. and footwear. She even launched a Paris beach club in the Philippines. She was putting her name on actual real estate developments.
It seems like she would say yes to almost anything.
Well, yes and no. I think she was one of the first to really understand that you could monetize the self on a global scale through licensing. She licensed her name to a mobile game called Diamond Quest way back in 2006.
Mobile gaming in 2006, that's pre-iPhone App Store. That's incredibly forward-thinking.
She had sparkling wine in a can called Rich Prosecco. She was diversifying her portfolio before most celebrities even had a portfolio to begin with. She turned Paris Hilton into a logo.
Precisely. She detached the person from the brand. You could buy a piece of the Paris Hilton lifestyle for $40 at the perfume counter, even if you'd never set foot in the Waldorf Astoria. It was aspirational consumerism perfected.
But with that level of saturation comes the backlash. And that brings us to Section 4. The peak of overexposure and the dark side. This is roughly 2006 to 2007. The tide starts to turn.
This was the era where you literally could not escape her face. If you turned on the TV, she was there. If you went to the grocery store, she was on every single magazine cover. Forbes magazine ranked her the most overexposed celebrity repeatedly in 2006 and 2008.
It got so bad that the Associated Press, the AP, the global news agency, tried to ban mentioning her for a week in 2007, just as an experiment.
A news boycott. Can you imagine?
And Us Weekly famously ran a Paris-free issue. Can you imagine being so famous that the media, the very engine of your fame, has to actively try not to talk about you because the public is sick of you?
It speaks to the fatigue, but it also speaks to the aggression of the paparazzi economy that she was at the center of. We have to talk about this because it was genuinely dangerous.
Yeah.
A photo of her at that time could be worth anywhere from $8,000 to, in some cases, $1 million, depending on the context, who she was with, what she was doing.
That puts a literal bounty on her head every time she leaves her house.
It does. It incentivized a swarm of photographers to follow her every move, cut her off in traffic, provoke her just to get a reaction shot because an angry Paris was worth more than a smiling Paris. This era fueled the rise of TMZ and Paris Hilton.
And remember, this was before celebrities had Instagram or Twitter to clap back or control their own stories.
She had no direct line of communication to the public. The tabloids controlled the narrative entirely, and they were ruthless.
And that level of scrutiny meant that when she stumbled, the whole world was watching. And she did stumble. We have to talk about the legal troubles.
Yes, the driving offenses, there were DUIs, and then driving with a suspended license. This led to probation violations. It was a spiral of bad decisions, all amplified by the nonstop flashbulbs.
And eventually it led to a jail sentence in 2007. This was a huge cultural moment. I remember where I was when I heard Paris Hilton was going to jail.
She was sentenced to 45 days, and the drama surrounding it was just intense. The LA County Sheriff actually tried to release her to home confinement after just a few days, citing an unspecified medical condition, likely severe anxiety or panic attacks.
Right.
But the judge was having none of it. He overruled the sheriff and ordered her back to jail to finish her sentence.
That scene in the courtroom where she's crying and screaming for her mother as she's being taken away, it was incredibly raw, and it was broadcast everywhere.
It stripped away the invincible, untouchable heiress persona. For the first time, people saw a scared, vulnerable young woman. She served about 23 days in the end.
But the public sentiment at the time was so harsh. A Gallup poll showed 63% of Americans felt unsympathetic toward her. She became this symbol of unearned privilege. The feeling was, she thinks she's above the law and she needs to learn a lesson.
There was a real sense of schadenfreude in the culture. People enjoyed seeing her taken down a peg.
And that privilege made her a target for more than just criticism and paparazzi. We have to mention the bling ring.
Right. This now famous group of teenagers who burglarized celebrity homes in Hollywood. They targeted Paris specifically because her life was an open book. They knew her schedule from the news.
They knew when she was in Vegas for a club appearance or in Miami for a party.
So they knew the house was empty. And they robbed her home 7 times.
7. That's not a typo. 7 separate times.
And here is the detail that just blows my mind. According to the reports, she didn't even notice the first few times.
What? How is that possible?
She had so much stuff, jewelry, clothes, cash just lying around, that they stole nearly $2 million worth of items before she finally realized things were missing.
That is. Well, it certainly reinforces the out-of-touch heiress image, doesn't it?
It does. It highlights the sheer, almost unimaginable excess, but it also highlights the vulnerability of living that publicly. Her house was essentially a department store that people knew how to break into.
And on top of that, she had serious stalkers. The research mentions a guy with Hilton tattoos trying to break into her house, another guy who landed a plane with a banner proposing to her. It really highlights the dark side of that level of fame. It's not just flashing lights, it's a constant physical threat.
It is. It shows the danger of living your life so publicly. But as we know, Paris is nothing if not resilient. She takes this era of overexposure and negativity, and she pivots hard.
Section 5, Reinvention. First, she pivots to music. Now, Stars Are Blind came out in 2006, right in the middle of all this chaos, and honestly, it's a bop.
It is a certified bop. It was
Yeah.
a legitimate global hit. It reached the top 10 in 17 countries. Critics were sharpening their knives, ready to tear it apart. But it was actually a really well-produced, catchy reggae pop song.
But the real pivot, the one that really surprised the industry, was her move into professional DJing around 2012.
This is where she leveraged the party girl image into a new profession. Instead of just attending the party, now she was in charge of the party.
I remember when this was announced, people laughed. The electronic music world was very dismissive. The DJ deadma5 mocked her publicly. It was seen as a joke. Oh, the rich girl bought some equipment and is pressing play on an iPod.
The criticism was intense, but again, you have to look at the receipts. She debuted at a massive pop music festival in Brazil. And she worked at it, she took it seriously, and she eventually became the highest paid female DJ in the world.
The money is just insane. We're talking about being paid $2.7 million for 4 nights in Ibiza.
That breaks down to something like $347,000 an hour to play music.
An hour.
And she held a 5-year residency at Amnesia in Ibiza, which is one of the biggest clubs in the world. You don't keep a residency at a top club in Ibiza for 5 years if you can't hold a crowd, no matter what your last name is.
That's a really fair point. If the music stops or the vibe dies, the crowd leaves and the club loses money.
Exactly. She understood the Hilton rule. The crowd is the currency. Promoters knew that if Paris Hilton is in the DJ booth, the club will be full, the bottle service will be flowing, and the press will be there. She monetized the party itself.
And she even signed to Cash Money Records' Lil Wayne's label in 2013. That is a crossover I absolutely did not see coming.
It shows her ability to navigate different cultural spaces. She isn't afraid to step into a lane where people think she doesn't belong and just own it.
And more recently, she's pivoted again, this time into Web3 and the metaverse.
She's the self-proclaimed queen of the metaverse. And honestly, she has a good claim. She was selling NFTs for millions before most of us even knew what an NFT was.
She sold a collection for $1.5 million, right?
Correct. And she created Paris World in the online gaming platforms Roblox and the Sandbox, a whole virtual world.
I saw a stat that Paris World in Roblox had 3.4 million visitors. She threw a virtual New Year's Eve party in there that was bigger than the one in Times Square.
And it drove an estimated $60 million in earned media ad equivalency. The woman understands new platforms.
It's a clear pattern, isn't it? She jumps on new media trends early. She did it with reality TV, she did it with social media, and now she's doing it with the metaverse. She spots the next platform and claims the territory before the rest of Hollywood even catches up.
She's a digital pioneer in that sense.
So we've seen the party girl, the mogul, the DJ. But in 2020, we got introduced to a side of her that changed absolutely everything. Section 6, the real Paris activism and trauma.
This all centers around the YouTube Originals documentary, This is Paris.
This was so different from her other reality shows. This was not The Simple Life. This was not a performance.
No, it was grim, it was raw, and it was shockingly honest. For the first time in public, she dropped the character. She dropped the baby voice.
That was the most jarring part, hearing her real voice.
It was. She sat in a chair, looked at the camera, and spoke in her natural lower register about things she had never, ever discussed before.
And she revealed the full extent of the abuse at Provo Canyon School and the other facilities.
It was an absolute turning point. She detailed being strip-searched, beaten, forced to take mystery medication, placed in solitary confinement for days on end. She talked about the goons, that's the industry term, who came into her bedroom in the middle of the night to kidnap her and take her to the school.
It's just terrifying to even think about. A teenager being taken from her bed?
It is. And she said the filming process itself was a healing space for her. She realized that she had been running from this trauma for 20 years, creating this perfect Barbie life so she wouldn't have to think about the scared, powerless girl in Utah.
And she didn't just share the story for sympathy or for views. She took action. Real, concrete action.
This is where the pivot to serious activism happens. And she didn't just tweet about it. She became a key figure in Breaking Code Silence movement, which advocates for survivors of institutional child abuse.
She organized protests in Utah. But more importantly, she went to the legislatures. She went to the halls of power.
She testified against the troubled teen industry at the Utah State Legislature. Testimony is grueling. You are under oath. You are recounting your deepest trauma in front of strangers and cameras and the very people who run these institutions.
And she did it in Utah, which is the hub of this multi-billion-dollar industry that is facing the beast in its den.
And she didn't stop there. She took a fight to Washington, D.C. She went to the U.S. Congress.
And it worked. She was instrumental in passing SB 127 in Utah, which is a new law that requires more government oversight, limits the use of restraints and seclusion, and mandates reporting of abuse.
And then, on a federal level, she championed the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act, which was signed into law by President Biden in 2024.
That is a staggering achievement. To go from the simple life to standing next to the President of the United States as he signs a bill you fought for into law, a bill to protect children. It's unbelievable.
It's a complete rebranding, but it feels completely authentic because it's rooted in her own pain. She used her massive platform, the fame she built, the overexposure that people criticized, and she weaponized it to shine a light on this dark corner of society.
It made lawmakers have to pay attention.
It did. When Paris Hilton walks into a congressional hearing, the cameras follow. She used that attention for something truly important.
It really recontextualizes her entire career in a way. Now let's look at where she is personally today in Section 7, because her love life was tabloid fodder for 2 decades straight.
It was a very high-profile dating history, to say the least. There are rumors about Leonardo DiCaprio. She dated Nick Carter from the Backstreet Boys.
Oh man, the Nick Carter era, the matching tattoos, the public breakup. It was a whole saga.
Then she dated a series of Greek shipping heirs. Paris Latsis, Stavros Niarchos. She was engaged a couple of times. She dated Benji Madden from Good Charlotte. It just seemed like she was always searching for someone, but it was always chaotic and played out in the public eye.
But she finally seems to have found some stability. She married venture capitalist Carter Riem in 2021.
A venture capitalist.
Yeah.
Someone who understands business, branding, and investing. I think that makes a lot of sense for her. An equal partner in that sense.
And she's now entered motherhood. She welcomed a son, Phoenix, and a daughter, London, via surrogacy in 2023.
It seems she has finally built that stable family unit she maybe didn't have growing up, and certainly didn't have during her chaotic 20s. She's built it on her own terms.
And when we look back at her legacy-defining influencer culture, it is just hard to overstate her impact.
She is the blueprint. There is no other way to say it. She invented the modern, famous for being famous economy. Full stop.
I mean, just look at Kim Kardashian. Kim started her public life as Paris's closet organizer and friend. She was a side character on The Simple Life.
Kim was arguably her assistant for a time. Paris brought her into the spotlight, taught her how to pose for paparazzi, introduced her to people. The entire reality TV ecosystem, The Real Housewives, Jersey Shore, all the way to the D'Amelios on TikTok. They all owe their format to the path Paris carved out.
She showed that you could monetize your daily life. Your life was the product.
Paris even claims she invented the selfie with Britney Spears back in 2006.
Which is a fun claim. It's debatable technically. People have been taking self-portraits for a long time. But culturally?
Culturally, she has a point. She popularized the aesthetic of the selfie. The MySpace angle, holding the camera up high, the pose. She pioneered the monetization of self.
As she says, she paved the way for people to be their own brand.
Exactly. Before her, selling out was a bad thing for a celebrity. After her, selling out was the entire goal.
It's really undeniable. Okay, let's wrap this all up. Let's recap the journey.
It's been a long one.
We went from the rebellious heiress releasing snakes in the Waldorf Astoria
to the dumb blonde reality star of The Simple Life, a character she played for nearly a decade.
to the most overexposed celebrity on the planet, ending up in jail and becoming a national hunchline.
To the global business mogul with the multi-billion-dollar perfume empire and the highest-paid female DJ in the world.
And finally, to this serious legislative activist, dropping the persona to reveal her trauma and successfully changing federal law to protect children.
It is a remarkable, almost unbelievable evolution.
And it leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. Critics spent a decade calling her talentless and overrated. They mocked her voice, her clothes, her intelligence. They wrote her off again and again. Yet she built a multi-billion-dollar empire and changed federal law.
Hmm.
So was the Dumb Blonde Act actually one of the most brilliant, most effective marketing strategies of the 21st century? And honestly, are we all just living in the world that Paris Hilton designed?
I think the evidence suggests we might be. That's hot.